I've finally beaten Fire Emblem Engage, and wow, it took a lot longer than expected. Around 84 hours on hard classic, but including a handful of hard resets, maybe closer to 90 hours. That's alright though, because I very much enjoyed the wild ride. I want to briefly talk about the game in a non-spoiler section first, but we can discuss things like overall feelings on the game, the gameplay, and what I enjoyed or want to see it be improved. Then for most of this video, I want to discuss full in-game spoiler territory, so if you haven't beaten the game yet, I encourage you to stop watching there. For the gameplay, I will have random B-roll going in the background, and for the non-spoiler section, I'm only going to include up to Chapter 9. Chapter 10 pretty handily enters the mid-game. This video will be pretty unorganized, and I will not talk about everything. I just want to lay out my thoughts after beating the game. First up, gameplay-wise, this might be my favorite in the whole franchise. I think the emblems were OP, and honestly, that's okay. The difference between having emblems and not having emblems is very noticeable, and that is further showcased later on in the game when you can upgrade the bond levels to a higher tier. It felt really good to utilize different emblems and their skills to take down bosses or get out of sticky situations. I also really enjoyed the new unit types in Engage, and I kind of hope they bring them back. They reduced cavalry and fly mobility to only 6 spaces, made the various infantry classes pretty diverse, and army units are god tier until they face a mage. Healers got such a big upgrade in this game, and I think staves as a whole were extremely powerful. The basic obstruct staff already opens up fun new tactics, and if you've been playing them, Micaiah shows just how strong staff effects can be when she makes them into an AoE. The Chi Adept perk of granting chained guard was satisfying to use and annoying to face. I just liked having more support options for the mostly support class besides purely healing. Chain attacks were also extremely potent. Something I liked was revival stones on the bosses. A lot of the time you really need to coordinate an attack, and while it may be annoying to miss the KO on an HP bar by 1 or 2, when you pull off that 1-turn KO, it feels incredibly good. I think the emblems in Engaging really succeed in making the player feel powerful, and overall just made Engage a fun gameplay experience. The break mechanic I feel like won't be set in stone in future Fire Emblem games, but I personally liked it. It made enemy phase soloing pretty dangerous. However, it also rewarded you for having the correct weapon triangle advantage when facing dangerous threats like the bosses. I will say, having someone with the arts weapons is extremely valuable for breaking purposes. Again, I liked how many options healers got in this game. Either I used them to heal allies, inflict status effects on foes, or punch the ranged weapons to break them. Now let's talk about some things I had some issues with. First up, skirmishes. I feel these are poorly implemented by being disguised as extra ways to train or make money. On hard difficulty at least, the first skirmish I did was awful and I had to quit the map entirely. The fact the entire map of enemies swarm all at once makes leveling lower level units almost impossible when the enemies are scaled up in level. I felt the skirmishes were tougher challenges than some main chapters, and I only did 2, maybe 3 the entire game. I mainly did it to level up Jean, who I did end up using. Luckily, he can just heal allies to gain XP, and I definitely abused healing the same unit without a weapon over and over. As for gold skirmishes, this has got to be one of the biggest traps ever because the game made it seem like donating to nations is kind of like a main feature of the game, but to make money, you then had to go beat the hard skirmish encounters, and it did not feel very satisfying or worth the effort. I think later on it was fine, but early game donating is such a big trap if a player does it willy-nilly. Money is tight in Engage, and I don't want to say it's because the DLC comes with the silver card to make the shops cheaper, but it's definitely a selling point, that is for sure. As a perpetual hoarder, I was never close to 0 gold, but it quickly added up if you wanted to donate or refine weapons. Later on, you also just don't get any cash influx for a very long time. Not exactly early game, but I felt like reclassing in this game was not handled as well as it could have been. First off, base classes were basically worthless. They seemed to be 0 reason to second seal into another base class unless you somehow hit the level cap and did not have master seals. I did do this with Jean because I made him into a lance fighter to get into a halberdier. I trained him to level 8, used Leaf to pass along lance proficiency, and re-leveled to 10 on lance fighter. I don't think that was worth it because I ended up maxing halberdier anyway and had the second seal to restart John's levels. Now, something that bothered me was reclassing in the mid game. All I'm gonna say is that I wanted Clan to be a sage. He hit level 20 as a mage and I still could not make him a sage. Had to opt for Mage Knight in the end, which was fine actually, but I felt like I got punished for not knowing what was coming and then just didn't have any other options. I think the simple proficiency system is easier to manage, but tying proficiencies to specific emblems is a bit constraining. Before we move into full spoiler territory, let's talk about the Somnial and exploration after fights. My first complaint, Somnial was too chill. Seriously though, it had a very different vibe than the monastery or the little war camp in Three Hopes, and I fully enjoyed that relaxation time in between battles. I personally was disappointed that most characters did not have anything to say in regards to the current point of the story, which is kind of an issue on its own. Unlike Three Houses, where your main class usually chimes in here and there on what's going on, outside the 4 main royals in Engage, literally no one else talks about the ongoing plot. By extension of no one else participating in the story, it's extremely hard to get a feel for the many characters in the game, and honestly, this has always been an issue in the Fire Emblem franchise. It feels like a leftover issue due to permadeath requiring the game to provide more unit options, but when people just want to know the characters more, it just doesn't work out when you got 10 to 15 unit slots in battle, but 30 to 40 characters total. I already want to jump back into another playthrough because I just straight up did not get to interact with most of the cast, and I want to know more. The game is also not good at providing ways to build support besides battle, but most of the time tactically I can't have 2 units always stuck together. I think they needed to be more support building options besides cooking and the arena. Now with that said, it was extremely satisfying to build ace supports with Alir because you got more fun notes in the ally notebook. The personalized pictures were an excellent touch, and I think it was a nice simple way to connect with the characters more. Other things I enjoyed: Sami, of course. I think the outfits were a fun touch as well, and like most things, you didn't really have to interact with it if you didn't want to. I'm a little disappointed the animal adoption feature just turned into a metagame for getting ore via dogs. It's kind of funny though. Something odd to me was that the Samio by design is never full of all your characters. In a similar way to saving time by getting rid of main story related pieces of dialogue, I felt like it was disappointing that my entire army wasn't chilling together all the time. The pool had like 3 people max, and the cafe was barely full. I doubt it would be a performance issue considering everyone is standing still, so that was a weird decision to me. I think they wanted less people so players didn't feel pressured to talk to everyone, and that applied to the exploration feature as well. I will say, there's definitely less non-battle related downtime, which is good. However, I feel there could have been a better balance, especially when they didn't have these sections use full voiceover. You will see a lot of the same lines over and over. Before I move into the spoilers section, I will say that there was a lot of pure tactical gameplay in Engage, and I don't think I replayed any map outside of skirmishes. Paralogs were straightforward to unlock, unlike in Three Houses, so you have plenty of gameplay left even once you get the main cast together. Alright, with that said, let's now move into the spoiler section of the video. This is your final warning to stop watching and maybe come back once you finish the game, because I am going to discuss and showcase major plot stuff. Where to start? Let's discuss one of my favorite sections in the game, Chapter 11. Absolutely one of the highlights and turning points in the game, with the player losing access to all their emblems and the enemy units are hunting you down while having said emblems. This is quite a rough map, and I love that it even takes away the time crystal, meaning no rewinds, at least until later. It was pretty wild having Sigurd chase you down and Makai use AoE freeze. I like when gameplay and story come together, and this particular chapter reminded me a lot of Chapter 10 in Awakening, when you know who takes a tumble off a cliff. Instead of a pure emotional beatdown by the player's party, Chapter 11 in Engage is a mad scramble to get the hell out because things have gone terribly wrong. I personally did not mind Ivy coming in to bail us out because it helped showcase she was committed to switching sides at that point. I wouldn't have minded needing to go the whole chapter without emblems, but once the 4 hounds step in and Marnie is chasing you down with Sigurd, it seemed fairer to get some power back at that point. In general, I felt like Engage really forced you to get things done, so to say. I don't remember in past games seeing so many maps where a ridiculous amount of reinforcement steps in to sort of say, hey, you gotta take out the boss right now. I didn't mind it. I personally like when Fire Emblem maps force you to do X in a certain amount of time. The other major gameplay section I want to gush over is Chapter 17. I think the 6 emblems versus 6 emblems fight is a real fun experience. It's set up as a major battle event and another turning point in the story. This one reminds me of a larger scale fight like in the time skip battle of the Eagle and Lion in Three Houses, or the Double Desert boss battle in Sacred Stones when the twins reunite for the endgame. I think Chapter 17 also presents one of the issues with Engage in that in the endgame, or mid to endgame, you kind of start steamrolling because you do not have to face dark emblems anymore. In the last fight, Sombran showcases he can sort of summon other dark emblems, and honestly, I think they could have been utilized more as the hounds get put on the defensive. I kind of felt the Zephyr and Gris fight was underwhelming since they had no emblems, and just in general, I didn't think the falling meteors were that threatening. Maybe it could have been better with them having dark emblems or dark emblems just being on mini bosses to present bigger threats on the map. If I had a more concrete example of this, it would be the freaking 3 or 4 HP bar mages in Sigurd's Paralogs. I think people said they represented Julius and Ishtar, and I don't know if you had to fight them, but it was so funny just to see 2 random units being so juiced up. Speaking of mini bosses, I'm not sure how to feel about the dragons in Engage. First off, I feel like no one even mentioned the fact dragons were present, even though I kind of just assumed they're the corrupted zombie dragons, which is okay. Second, those guys just did not miss, and basically did true damage, which was a huge issue for my units with only like 30 HP. Solely because of this, I felt HP became a very good stat, and I did use my Seraphobes immediately. Going back to the map designs, I did like the Emblem Paralogs. They felt a little unfair at times, but generally speaking, it was a nice way to use throwback maps from those older games, and they felt rewarding since they unlocked the bond levels up to 20. I thought they weren't going to be so bad since Lucina's Paralog was super basic, but Lynn spamming her long range attack and Ike destroying the entire middle section of his map made things much tougher. Ike even crit my Louis as a way of showing dominance, although I felt my run was already over once he broke that middle section. That one was a bit dirty. I thought a couple of the Paralogs were disappointing. Micaiah's was a bit weird because there's so many ballistas and cannons and I basically did not use any of them. Celica kinda just suicided into my team thanks to Warp Ragnarok. I didn't even fight the dragons on that map. For Leaf's Paralog, I wanted the items on those units running away, but those ballistic dudes were insane. I ended up rushing them down using Micaiah to AoE warp, and then had Sigurd and Celica get close to the archers. I feel I lucked out when the surviving ballista targeted Lynn's clones instead of my squishy unit. That was a fun map though, because at the very end, Leaf's Mage Knights just lined up perfectly for a 6-man override. One of the most satisfying things I've ever done in a Fire Emblem game for sure. For Marth and Erica's Paralogs, were those meant to be as difficult as they were? I tried to intercept the thieves on Erica's map and ended up overextending my team. I then had to backtrack all the way to the start while Erica and a million guys chased up the left side. I ended up winning by having the mages chase Clan on the left side while I spammed obstruct ice pillars to separate Erica from the rest of them. I feel it would have been fine if I didn't greed for the Seraph, which I lost by the way, but I was too stubborn to restart the map. I also feel Marth's Paralog was similar. I assume it would have been faster to go right immediately, but getting all the chest items meant Marth and crew grouped up in the corridor and it just got out of hand, to be honest. For my struggles, I did enjoy seeing Erica use her engage attack with Ephraim. Literally a one-time thing, but seeing the twins tag team in full 3D is just so surreal. On that note, I think Engage very obviously is meant to be an anniversary game. I don't think this has ever been officially said, but after playing the game, it's very clear they wanted to hit fans with nostalgia. That scene at the end, with the now 13 emblems standing side by side, is exactly like when the Power Rangers get all the Red Rangers together. It's cheesy, but as a fan who has played all the games that came out in English, it's very touching to see just how far this series has come. You got Alir reading out the invocations with the main Fire Emblem theme playing, and it hits all the right kind of good campy cheesy feelings. I want to take a tangent and commend how they utilize the invocations as an actual plot point. When it's revealed the invocations are actually a fell dragon thing only, it makes you realize that's why Lumera never said anything when she first engages with Sigurd. Didn't think anything of it at first, but I like the little foreshadowing. The other thing I appreciate is that people have pointed out the invocations are in the main theme song for Engage. At first, people thought the song was just describing what was on screen visually, but it's deeper than that. The extra layer of detail is super cool, and it's probably why the song itself is a little odd since they had to fit in these lines. I want to go through this because it's an excellent detail that adds to the whole emblem nostalgia feelings of the game. I'll have the lyrics on the screen on the left and the matching invocations on the right side. Let's just examine the important lines in the song. Meet the flower who cares for everyone. Care for us, emblem of echoes for Celica. The rising force of black and steel. Rise up, emblem of binding, Roy. Fighting in the desert sand. Fight on, emblem of radiance, Ike. Meet the snow that sweeps across the field. Sweep across, emblem of blazing, Lynn. The light and dark restore our skies. Restore calm, emblem of the sacred, Erica. Tonight heal the wounds and learn from yesterday. Heal us, emblem of dawn, Micaiah, and teach us, emblem of the academy, Byleth. Skips a couple lines to memories of red and blue, reigniting you. Reignite us, emblem of awakening, Lucina. Bare fangs and all, free yourself forevermore here and now. Bare your fangs, emblem of fates, Corrin, and free us, emblem of genealogy, Leaf. Skip some more lines. Bond of fire, connect us, Fire Emblem, Alir. Love provides, protect us, provide for us, emblem of the holy war, Sigurd. Skip a couple more lines to end with bonds of hope, unite us, shining on to guide us. Shine on, emblem of beginnings, Marth. While the main theme is very non-serious in tone, I enjoy this deeper layer of meaning behind the lyrics. It's a great hidden level of detail for the game. On a related note, I really enjoyed the late reveal of Engage's Fire Emblem. Every game has a specific item or object that is called the Fire Emblem. In Three Houses, it's pretty on the nose, with the Crest of Flames just being an alternate saying of Emblem of Fire. Alir being the 13th emblem, and the Fire Emblem was a fun reveal. To transition into talking about the plot a bit, I thought it was hilarious that Sombron was literally just trying to leave and was totally fine not bothering Elios any longer. Dude just wanted to get out of jail, but you know, he kind of did a lot of messed up things, so Alir didn't just want to leave it at that. The talk of the Zero emblem was so odd. I did not really get the very end where Sombron may have seen or was seeing the Zero emblem before he disappeared. Was he just crazy or what? I have to assume the DLC Wave 4 separate story might cover this topic, otherwise it just seemed extremely awkward. Like, I want to sympathize and understand why Sombron did what he did, but if they aren't going to elaborate more, then kind of hard to do that. They literally throw this info at Alir in the last part of the game, and similar to Alir, exactly how is that going to change the players' minds about being the big bad dragon? For some parts of the story I was surprised about. King Morion was great, did not expect this character to turn out the way it did. I also really enjoyed Lumiere coming back as a corrupted. We made too many jokes about dead Fire Emblem parents, and System said fine, have your parents back. I liked how evil she was, although I think it's clear the actual Lumiere is not in control the entire time until the end. If you fought corrupted Lumiere with Clan Fram or Alir, and I assume Vander too, she repeats the lines she says at the beginning of the game. That was a very nice callback. Have to say, I'm a little disappointed we did not fight her in dragon form. Bit of a shame if you ask me. For some other things, I did like how the story was progressing at the end. Not sure if I liked how Zephyr turned out, but I like that they at least addressed her reason for betrayal. The time travel part seemed a bit random, however getting to see past Alir was a good thing, so I guess that justifies that whole section. It was good to see Alir's distaste for the corrupted came from seeing them kill their siblings, and they would be next if they turned out to be a defect. Regarding Emblem Alir, I mean at like 50-60 hours in, I was already on board for whatever ridiculous shenanigans happened. I previously joked about this game being about collecting the Dragon Balls, but then the main character dies and the Dragon Balls are used to bring them back. Alir's hair changes color in this game, and the Bond Blast Engage attack is straight out of DBZ. Alir's crit animation with arts weapons is also basically just Kamehameha. It's so ridiculous, but I loved it anyway. I thought the Engage Plus mechanic was a really neat final endgame feature. It rewarded you for getting ace support with your units and felt very powerful. I could go on and on about this game, but to end the video, I just want to talk about my main units for this playthrough. Favorite unit by far was Fram, and she fully met my expectations when I saw our healers were going to be kicking butt in Engage. Very little damage output in the early game, but she almost reached level 20 before promoting to Martial Master. After getting the Silver Arts weapon and giving the Corrin Engage with it, Fram turned into a goddamn monster. I blinked and suddenly she was actually a competent fighter. She was extremely useful because she could break a ton of bosses and could quad a lot of units once I got the Flashing Fist, which granted bonus speed. With Corrin's Engrave, she basically had a killer weapon, and I refined it a couple times to make up for the lower might. I also gave her extra build from skill inheriting thanks to Leaf to not get slowed down for quads. Martial Master is easily my new favorite class. The animations are top tier, and combined with the new gameplay options for healers, Fram was always useful at any point. I would say my other standout performer was Alchrist. I enjoyed the sniper class in general, but his unique sniper class is busted, and he was proccing Luna or critting almost every other fight. As my sole archer, he also got all the bows to play with and was incredibly useful with the longbow or radiant magic bow. For this playthrough, I also wanted to experiment with John. We got no lance fighter, so he became my halberdier project. I think the hat matched the outfit quite well, and John was a fun unit through and through. I thought backup units in general were super strong in this game. I ended up using Lapis because I liked her, and she became my sword axe hero. Kinda struggled early on, but I found she did well once I gave her Emblem Roy. My other backup unit was Boucheron, who is the definition of the unreliable early game axe fighter. I am fairly certain my Boucheron has less strength than when Panette joins, and I did not touch Panette at all. However, despite horrendous strength for a Berserker, Boucheron had stupid amounts of HP and stupid high build. I ended up using him with Emblem Leaf for more build, and the guy was doubling with Tomahawks at the end, which felt illegal. To be honest, I don't feel Berserker is very good in this game, but that's not taking into account growth rates. For my magic damage dealers, I ended up using Clan and Saline. Saline did not touch her sword at all. She was basically just a sage with her unique class. Clan ended up as a mage knight with super high speed and res, but actually god awful base magic. Regardless, double Boganon Blast worked out quite well for him. For my mobile classes, I had Chloe as my Lance Griffin Knight and Alfred in his promoted class. I felt really proud of the few times I utilized Griffin Knight's Pathfinder skill, and Chloe did alright with her pretty high speed. The extra staff user was great, and she found her stride with Emblem Erica and a Flame Lance. For Alfred, he was not that amazing, but Cantor solved a lot of problems with him, and I gave him the Brave Lance, which is what he really did well. I often had him charging in to take out squishy units, then retreating with Cantor. I also had some fun using Lynn with her bonus speed and speed taker skill on Alfred. A low-key MVP of my playthrough, and I think for a lot of people, is Louis. Armored units are freaking good in this game. I gave Louis the spear with Lynn's engraving for 40 hit and bonus crit. With Ike's Wrath, Louis basically had a ranged killer lance that always hit. Reliable counterattack damage and total physical damage tanking was amazing, and also gave Louis Corrin's parap skill, which made him immune to chain attacks. Very useful for tanking when I'm using Great Aether. As for Alir, I felt my Alir was not very good most of the playthrough. The promoted Divine Dragon class did not feel like it was doing anything, so for fun, I made Alir into a Wolf Knight once they hit 20, which by the way changed her outfit for all the cutscenes. Female Alir does keep the ponytail as a Wolf Knight, if that matters to you. My final team spots went to Cedo, Yunaka, and Vale. Dancing is always busted in Fire Emblem, but it's extra busted in Engage with the engaged forms. Yunaka kinda got benched when the game only lets you use 12 slots, but once it opened up to 14, I brought her back in with Micaiah as an extra healer. I initially was using Alir with Micaiah because they can access the convoy, which means access to any staff at any time. But once the Engage Plus mechanic happened, I had to swap Micaiah to someone else. I should have leveled Yunaka up more, but I was stuck into a 12-man team, and she was very far behind in the endgame levels. For the same reason, this is why I ended up using Vale, because I did not really level up anyone else. She did just fine, and because I didn't get Clan to become my Sage, she got the Nova Tome once that was available. For the emblems, I would say the most impactful for me was Corrin and then Byleth. Corrin's -4 debuffs and gravity are so important for boss killing and or stalling deadly threats. With 3-range longbows or thunder spells, you can keep enemies in place if you need to stall, and Torrential Roar also putting down a water tile made hitting bosses much more consistent. For Byleth, if Cedo is busted, then Goddess Dance is 4 times better. That was basically it. More actions makes killing bosses easier to do. I also want to shout out Lynn and her clones. Their sacrifices will not be forgotten and reminded me a lot of the good old Summoner class. For inheritable skills, I only did a couple big spends like Speed Taker on Jean. Mostly, I just threw Reposition and Counter on everyone. Counter should not be 1000 SP for what it does, and Reposition stays busted no matter the game. Alright, I'm going to cut myself off here. I don't expect most people to have beaten the game yet, but I wanted to just give my thoughts while things are fresh in my mind. With the game beaten, I can now work on some videos. We do have the Faye anniversary coming as well, so lots of things to do. Hope you guys are looking forward to upcoming videos, and if you want to share your comments on Engage, at least for spoiler stuff, please preface your comments with a spoiler warning since the game is very fresh. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.